Next, I'd like to talk about the importance of rests, the absence of notes. Sometimes the notes that aren't played are the most musical. If you get a fill that's always dense and there's always a lot of notes, it doesn't allow the tune to breathe as much. You know, there's something to be said for having a few notes, the notes that are well chosen, not just, I can fit in these fast notes and everything, and it can create a very awkward feeling. You want to be able to leave room for space, which allows the other musicians to interact with you. It's again, like I said earlier, it's about talking to one another and listening to one another. So you still want to listen to the other musicians during your fills. It's not like, this is fill time, this is my time. You know, it's about the music. It's about listening to one another, reacting to one another. And when you leave space there, it almost has a pause in the music and allows the listener to almost question what's going on. There's a little bit of anticipation there, which can be very exciting. So you want to experiment with rests, not just trying to fit as many notes you can in there, because when you're doing your fill, again, you want to listen during your fill. It's not just your time to shine. Okay? It's always about supporting the music, helping the musicians feel better so that they play better, to inspire them. And then in turn, you'll look better. Now, the first fill I'd like to talk about with implementing rest is more of a halftime open feel shuffle groove. Now we get into the drag. It's just that little rudiment with the quick little double. I'll play it for you now. It's really nice and tight like this. That's the beginning of the fill. The snare, the single snare, is the downbeat. The drag is the pickup. So it actually starts before the downbeat. And then we got the first tom on the and then we have an 8th note rest, but the 8th note rest is in 16th note triplets. So therefore, again, an 8th note rest will take up 2 16ths, so 2 of the 16ths are rested. So it goes 1 and a rest on 2 8th note triplet rest, that is, or 16th note triplet rest that's an 8th note, and then you have a 16th on the let of 2, and then an 8th note on the and. So that first part of the fill is going to go like this. Now I'm going to play the bass drum on the quarter notes so you can see how it fits in the timing. I'm not going to play it in the fill with the music or anything. I'm just going to show you how it works. So it works like this. I'll be playing just the quarters on the kick. So you can see that 16th triplets on the and. Then we got 8th note rest on 3, and just 8th note quarter, flam, the snare, and floor tom. Just 2 notes. So now I'm going to play the whole fill. It goes like this. So there's lots of room for the other musicians to interact within that. Now I'm going to do the fill with the quarter notes so you can see how it relates to that pulse. So it'll be like this. So I'm going to do it with the beat. The beat I'm going to do straight 8th because the groove is more of an implied 16th note shuffle. So the 8th notes will work straight because you remember our subdivisions again, how it goes 1 and 2 and then it relates to the 16th note triplets because you go 1 triplet and triplet, 2 triplet and triplet. So that's why I can play a 8th note pattern and it's quite smooth in its transition to 16th note triplets, which is on that second tom. So I'll do beat fill beat and you get a feel for it. Here it goes. And now in a musical context. So you can see there how I left space for the other musicians to play throughout the fill, and it kind of allowed the music to really mesh well. It didn't become such a climactic, dramatic part for me to do all my stuff. It was a good release for the whole band and for the tune itself. So you always want to be conscious of leaving space, allowing the tune to breathe, and when you play less stuff, then you don't have to give off all your good ideas. You can save them for later. So always keep in mind to have lots of rests. On my next example of using rests, the fill just goes straight eighths, one and then there's an eighth note rest on 2 and 3, 4 for a quarter note. So it goes snare, first tom, rest, second tom, floor tom, flam on the snare for the quarter note. Now remember, the flam is both sticks coming down just slightly offset to give you a thicker sounding note. So I'll do just the fill. So it's going to sound like this. Again, I'll do it with the bass drum on the quarter notes so you can see how it works around the rests and it grooves. Here we go. Now with that fill, I wouldn't be so worried about proper sticking because there's so much space in there. Sometimes I might just go right, 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 and then flam, or I might go right, left, left, right, flam. So it's more of an emotional decision, which all of our fills should be. So now I'm going to play it with the beat, and I'm going to first play the fill twice with the quarter note on the kicks, or the kick on the quarter notes, do the fill, come back, and then I'll do it 2 more times without the kick drum. So it's going to sound like this. So remember, the rests are the same amount of space or time as the notes. So if you have an eighth note or an eighth note rest, they take up the same amount of time. If you're still unclear about the rests or the actual note values, please just go back and review them, because the more you understand it, the more this whole rest concept will make more sense to you. So now I'm going to do it with some music. Here we go.